Hey, what's going on, guys? James here bringing you another YouTube video, and this one is going to be kind of a special video because it's been a little bit since I recorded something for this channel, and it feels like a shame, a crime, but I've really been picking things up with all the video remakes and all of that stuff with the other channel, the gaming channel. So now I am ready to actually bring content that I truly want to make on this channel. And that content, of course, being just anything that I want to make. Anything that shows off the things that I love and that I'm passionate about. And of course, as I've stated before, one of my biggest passions ever is music. I love music so much. And that's why today I'm going to be bringing you my top 6 favorite bands. So let's get into it. So at number 6, it's a really interesting one because to give a little story before I say who it is, over the last few years, I found myself picking like one band, and not even intentionally picking the band, just picking one band every year and just doing like a deep dive on their discography. And for 2019, that would be the band All Time Low. In 2020, that would be the band Hey Monday. And now, at the start of 2021, number 6 on my list is the band Echosmith.
You make me sing, ooh, la la la.
Now, the indie pop, indie rock band, I never expected to really get into. Like, I knew them through Cool Kids, because who doesn't know them through Cool Kids? But just out of the blue, I decided to listen to their first album, Talking Dreams, back in January of this year. And I started to like it. I didn't listen to the entire thing at once, but then I eventually worked my way through it, and it quickly became an album I had in constant rotation. And I don't come back to every song on it, but great majority of them, like if it ever comes on, I won't skip it. I mean, any of them, if they come on, I won't skip them. And yeah, I just really love that album, Talking Dreams. And I've done a very minuscule amount of digging into their second album. I think Lonely Generation is what it's called. Something like that. I haven't done too much digging into that, and I definitely need to listen to that one with how much I do really enjoy the first album. But I'm not too familiar with the band that much right now. I do need to listen to them a little bit more. But as it stands right now, Echosmith is number 6 on the list. So let's see who number 5 is.
The pain of it all, the rise and the fall.
So number 5 has been a constant in my life since high school. Now, I've always known who they are. I've always listened to them for the most part, but I really became a fan of theirs back in my freshman year of high school. And this band is 3 Days Grace, one of the most popular commercial rock bands ever. Let's be honest. So the band that has been dominating the rock charts for the better part of 20 plus years at this point is really interesting because, like I said before, I've always known who they are. I knew them through stuff like I Hate Everything About You and Riot, Never Too Late, Animal Come, etc. The big hits from the first 2 albums you would expect people to know if they know who the band are. Now, I've gone back and forth. I do still really like them. I think they have a lot of good music to dig into that a lot of people actually don't really dig into that much. Especially when you really think about it with 3 Days Grace, most people, only want the stuff that Adam wrote, or at least played a part in writing. And then, even with the stuff that Adam wrote, they really only want 1X. For the most part, they want 1X and maybe I Hate Everything About You from that first album. And honestly, I think they have so much better than all of that. I mean, 1X I think is still their best album by far, but just because it's their most consistent. But for me, and I'll talk about this more at a later date, but for me, I think Life Starts Now, their third record, is better in most ways than 1X. It has higher highs, but it does have a few songs I think are pretty weak and hold it down, so that's why I wouldn't put it above 1X. I think The self-titled, the first album, was a pretty solid start overall, but there are a lot of songs in there that do feel kind of samey, so it's definitely not one that I come back to all that often. And Transit of Venus is the one that's the most divisive in the fan base, being Adam's last record, and it seems like people really either hate it or love it. There's not people who really sit in between and are mixed on it, whereas I absolutely love it. I'm not in between either. And I think it's their second most consistent record. You can definitely tell it was kind of more of an experimental, let's see what we can do record. But I think there's a lot of stuff on that record in particular that really gets slept on. And if you have not listened to Transit of Venus, definitely check it out. But overall, 3 Days Grace, like I said before, has been a band that's stayed with me since like 2014. And it's always been there. There was a little bit of time where I wasn't so keen on the band, but I don't know. They've always been there, and even if I don't listen to them anywhere near as much as I used to, they're nowhere near as high on this list as they used to be, but I think they'll always be there. But with all that being said, 3 Days Grace was number 5. Let's see who's number 4.
I can run, I can fly, you can kiss this thing goodbye.
Now, number 4 is another band I've already mentioned, name-dropped in this video. A band that throughout 2020, I took the time to dig deep into the small discography that they do have as a band, and that band is Hey Monday, a pop-punk band that started in West Palm Beach, Florida, way back near the mid to late 2000s with lead singer Cassidy Pope, who is now apparently doing really well over in the country scene. Of course, they had their first album, Hold On Tight, which is really, really good. It's a really solid pop-punk record. And then they had a follow-up EP that is leaving me right now. I love that EP a lot, but that's also a really solid 6-song EP. But overall, they don't have a whole lot of music to dig into. But if you like pop-punk, I think they're definitely worth listening to. And I know that they even did like a 2019 Hey Monday reunion, and that was really cool. But overall, like I said before, I really do enjoy their music. And since they don't have a lot as a band in their back catalog, they're super easy to get into for the most part, because they don't have a lot to listen to. They've got the first record, which has I think 12 songs, about an average length for a record. They have the 6-song EP. They have a smaller EP, which was for their song Candles, where you get a different version of Candles, plus the demo version, plus the song The One That Got Away, which is a really, really good song. And of course, they also have a Christmas EP that I haven't checked out yet at this point either. But overall, Hey Monday, a really solid pop-punk band, and I definitely think they're worth getting into, especially since they don't have a lot, so it's really easy and quick to get into them. But they're number 4. Who's number 3?
Nothing matters when the pain is all but gone, when you are finally awake.
So number 3 is really interesting as well, because they're a band that has been with me for quite a while. They've been with me since right after I got into 3 Days Grace, and this band is the punk band Rise Against. Now, I got into them right around 2016, 2017-ish, so it wasn't quite time for Wolves yet, but it was after the Black Market. And the first song I ever heard by them was their song Survive, because it was on the playlist for SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. Anyone who knows that game knows that that game had a phenomenal soundtrack for video game licensed soundtracks. So that song was the first one I ever heard, and that song was absolutely butchered in the game because of, it's a teen-rated game, can't really say the F word. We all get that. But I ended up listening to it later on, heard the full version of it. Then got into some of the bigger singles, got into some of the deeper cuts, and they were the first band that really helped me realize that pretty much anything that leans on punk in any way, I just absolutely love for the most part. There probably are some exceptions out there that I haven't come across quite yet, but anything that leans on and takes from punk, I really like. Which is why I can safely say my favorite genre now is pop punk. And of course, we'll get into that a little bit with the other two on this list. But yeah, Rise Against, absolutely love them. I heard them a long time ago through SVR07. Then they also had another song in a WWE game on the soundtrack of WWE 2K15, which at the time was the return of licensed soundtracks. And their song from the black market, Zero Visibility, was on there. So, all I can say really is, because I don't want to get too in-depth with anything, if I do, I want to do like very specific videos for the bands and albums and stuff like that. But, all I can say is, thank God that they were featured in video games a lot, actually. So yeah. But Rise Against is number 3. Who is number 2?
Take these chances to turn it around. Take these chances, we'll make it somehow.
Number 2 is the band Paramore. Now, I wish I had a better intro like I did for the rest of the bands on this list for Paramore, because they're a band that I do really, really love. They've been with me for a long time, ever since one of my sisters had wrote something at one point in one of the houses that we lived in about something like Misery Business. At the time I didn't know what it was. That's the first time that anything Paramore was kind of like planted in my brain, was just reading the words Misery Business that one of my sisters wrote down years ago. So there was that, and then much like I said, like Rise Against and 3 Days Grace, once I started high school, more of that angsty music I started listening to a lot more, and a lot of that was driven by, I just started to get into a lot of the music that my oldest sister listened to herself. So a lot of like her music taste kind of like filtered down to me a little bit, and honestly I thank her for that, because if I was listening to just what I was listening to normally, I don't know. If she listened to just anything different, I don't think I would have ended up finding a lot of the bands that I listen to now. Like, my music taste really has stemmed a lot from hers. Not everything, obviously. My music taste kind of branches out a lot. But the main stuff I listen to definitely kind of stems from what she listens to. And Paramore was one of them. The first album I got into absolutely was Riot, because like it's one of their biggest. It's one of the most well-known. It has some of the best singles, I think. Absolutely. Crush, 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 That's What You Get, Misery Business. They all still hit so hard. They are fantastic singles. And Riot as a whole, I think as a full album, kind of gets slept on by the Paramore fan base. Who are always talking about how great like Brand New Eyes is, and the Self-Titled, and After Laughter, and I do agree those albums are good, and I even think After Laughter lyrically is fantastic, and I don't think the music is any slouch either on that album, but I think the lyrics stand out more with After Laughter than the instrumentals do. But regardless, I do think as a full album, Riot does kind of get slept on a little bit because of the fan base really wanting to stick with and talk about how great the last 3 albums are. The first 2 kind of get slept on a bit. And I mean, All We Know Is Falling gets slept on by all the fans of Paramore. Like, I guarantee it is a rarity to find someone who actually says, hey, All We Know Is Falling is fantastic. Let's appreciate this album more. And I mean, I don't think it's their best, but they steadily improved with almost every album. And probably, honestly, every album they did improve. Which is hard to say that a band ever does. And even if I'm not really a fan of Haley's solo work, I've tried to get into it, I really have, but nothing's clicked with me yet. I'll probably keep trying to go back to it and see if anything does a little bit later on. But Paramore's always a band that I can come back to at really any point. Whether it be like the depression-filled lyrics of After Laughter, or the angst-filled lyrics of anything else that they released for the most part, or whether it just be like the just always fantastic to sing along to stuff like Ain't It Fun and Still Into You from the Self-Titled. Paramore is great, I love them, and that's their number 2. Let's see who is number 1.
Don't be so sentimental, no, this love is accidental, so
Number 1, if it wasn't obvious, because I already name dropped this band in this video, earlier on, and I talked about like the genre that they're in at length. My favorite band of all time at this point, at this stage, number one, is the pop-punk band from Baltimore, Maryland, All Time Low. They're the band, like I talked about earlier in the video, they're the band that I really dug deep into their discography starting in 2019, and that continued into 2020. And I found myself, once I started to get into them, I found myself not being able to stop listening to them. And that started with, like, I was already familiar with some of their bigger songs, like Dear Maria, Damned If I Do Ya, and Weightless. But then, in 2019, once they dropped the documentary for It's Still Nothing Personal, along with that tribute album, I watched the documentary and loved that. Like, It's Still Nothing Personal just quickly started to grow on me. Like, and then every song, like, I never wanted to skip them. But from there, I listened to Don't Panic. But then from there, I went back and got into So Wrong It's Right. Then I went to, I think, Future Hearts and Dirty Work. Dirty Work took a little bit of time to grow on me. And the one that I will say probably took the longest to grow on me was Future Hearts. And I don't know what it was. But yeah, it did take a while. Like, Future Hearts, like I said before, was definitely the one that took the longest to grow on me. But eventually, like, I really got into it. And there's only, like, one or two songs on there that I normally won't come back to. And then the one I was the most scared to actually listen to be completely honest, was Last Young Renegade. And I say that because Last Young Renegade, it's the album that, for All Time Low, along with Dirty Work, is considered to be their worst by a lot of people. And on one hand, I can kind of see why, but on another, having listened to it and gotten behind it now, I love, like, every song on Last Young Renegade. I know some of the people that I respect, like, they just didn't like Last Young Renegade at all. And that scared me, so I was really scared to actually listen to it. But eventually I gave it a chance myself, and I do like it. That's really all I can say for the most part. I did go back and also listen to The Party Scene, and I think The Party Scene as an album is alright. It's alright, and I wish the band would acknowledge that album more than they do. But it's not perfect by any means. I think the mixing and the production is a little bit off at times with the debut. And I'm glad that they took, like, some of the biggest songs from The Party Scene and re-recorded them for the Put Up or Shut Up EP when they signed with Hopeless. And the only thing I would really wish, again, is that the band would just acknowledge The Party Scene's existence more. That's really all I can say outside of Wake Up Sunshine is also really good. Again, I don't think it's their best, but I think it is a really good standout record. Of course, if you know anything about All Time Low, you've probably heard Monsters at this point. I mean, it's become literally their biggest song ever. That's not even an exaggeration. It is their biggest song ever, their most successful song. Like, all in all, like, All Time Low, I'm so glad that I got into them, and that, honestly, the reason I think why I got into them was because once they dropped It's Still Nothing Personal, like, I wasn't listening to them that much outside of, like, the earlier name, Dear Maria, Damned If I Do Ya, and Weightless. And once they dropped It's Still Nothing Personal, the documentary and the album, YouTube started recommending that to me, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. I actually really like this. And then it kind of just snowballed from there, and I got into the band in full. So that is my top 6 favorite bands: All Time Low, Paramore, Rise Against, Hey Monday, 3 Days Grace, and Echosmith. And honestly, I probably could have Echosmith above 3 Days Grace at this point, but because I haven't dug too much into their stuff, that's why I wanted to keep it at number 6, because I just got into them this year, and I still have a lot more to listen to. But overall, that's all I've got to say, and again, like I said before, that is my top 6 favorite bands, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like, comment down below, share it on social media, do all that good stuff, and until next time, I'll see you later. Bye, guys.